I am so happy to introduce one of my favorite authors. He has become a favorite recently, but now I will be following you for life. Shep Hyken, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on Hospitality Reputation Marketing. Get great reviews. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. And I hope everybody does get great reviews, especially after listening to us talk today.
I hope we can inspire a few people. I just read Be Amazing or Go Home. And what was the one before?
The Convenience Revolution?
No, but I'm going to read that.
Amaze every customer every time?
That was the one.
Okay.
That was the one. That made me fall in love with you. You know what? You were so marvelous when I was watching you on with Hospitality Live with Rupesh. And I said,
yeah. I wondered if you knew who Rupesh was. I love Rupesh.
He's amazing. He really, like you, he speaks so simply and so from the heart as you do. And it's just very easy to understand how this inspiring message applies to you. And I only wish that I had found you and Rupesh and other wonderful thought leaders like that younger in my career, because when I started at the Library Hotel Collection, I only knew that I wanted to have more reservations and have more customers that were happy, and that I wanted everybody who walked into the hotel to leave happy. But how to actually make that happen, I didn't have a clue. And I had to do a lot of trial and error to learn. And it took me, at least the first 10 years. And still, I'm still trying to master it after 20 years of being in the Library Hotel Collection.
Right. So that was 2000. It was 2000. Yeah. So
Yes.
that was 20 years ago. I don't think they had something called the podcast back then. But there was, I don't even know if YouTube was really strong back then. Probably not. Today there's so many opportunities to find the information that you're looking for, be it on a podcast, YouTube videos, just a Google search. And was in 2000, was Yahoo still trying to compete with Google? And boy,
Yeah.
did you know Yahoo had a chance to buy Google and they turned it down?
Imagine that. Imagine that. So let me ask you, Shep. This podcast is really directed towards leadership, directors of sales and marketing and general managers and business owners. But what about the young people that are just starting out today? How can we give them a little heads up on leadership, how they can be amazing, and how they can inspire the rest of their team to build a culture of hospitality and continuous improvement?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about this prior to coming into the interview today. And when you share with me some of your background in New York, we talked about a couple of different people. We talked about Danielle Boulud, the famous chef, and Thomas Keller, the famous chef. But I did articles on both of them. And by the way, if we get a chance, I'd love to share with you why I was intrigued to write the article about Danielle Boulud. I think I wrote this probably in the last 6 weeks, because I watched how the restaurant hospitality business is just having the toughest time. And it looks like as we're speaking today, New York's going to go back into zero indoor dining. How do restaurants survive? And this guy, I'm not saying he was a chameleon. He was an adapter. Maybe that is like a chameleon. And all of a sudden he's doing mail order out of his kitchens. But Thomas Keller, I had a chance to sit down and have lunch with him. And he told some fascinating stories. But the one that intrigued me the most is how he started was as a dishwasher. And he worked for his mom's restaurant. So his mom said, yeah, come to work. We're going to make you a dishwasher. And I remember when I went to work for my family business one summer, I pumped gas. Okay. They owned some gas stations. And I had to pump gas when I was like 14 years old. And, how much fun is that for a 14-year-old kid, right? And I did other, what I would call, I don't want to use the word I did poop jobs. Okay. Let's call it that. I worked on a towboat one summer, as a deckhand. These are tough jobs. But when your mom owns a restaurant, you think yourself, oh, it won't be long before I'm helping her run the restaurant. No, she made him the dishwasher for months and months. And what he said he learned from that experience was, there's a lot of dishes and the dishwasher is just so big. So you have to have the system that everything fits perfectly. It's very repetitive. You're constantly doing it. And it's got to be done right, and it's got to be done efficiently. This is not the way most dishwashers are thinking, but this is even at the basic level. If somebody comes in and they don't have a lot of education and they're taught to do the dishes, they don't realize they're being efficient. The repetitiveness makes it better and better as they practice and practice it. But what Thomas Keller said is it set him up to understand that, repetition doesn't necessarily mean monotony. And eventually, when he became the world famous chef that he is, he owns the French Laundry and some other restaurants around the world, French Laundry being the most famous. He realized that when you've got to make that salmon dish, you're a famous chef and you got this fish dish that everybody comes in and orders, you got to probably make that 30, 40 times a night. And it's got to be done the exact same way every single time. No, mistakes. It's got to be done perfect because that's what they expect. And when you do that night after night, 40 times, maybe 50 times a night, you get really good. Just like a dishwasher gets really good. And that dishwasher gets so good. And by the way, I will say that if the food is good, people don't send it back. If it's excellent, they don't send it back. If there's a problem, they send it back. But I don't care how good the food is. The food could be the best food in the world. If it comes out on a dirty dish, it's going back. The dishwasher, which would apparently be the lowest level of education or of employment in a restaurant, becomes the most important job in the restaurant.
It's
Makes
so
sense?
true.
Yeah.
Just like housekeepers in
Exactly. A dirty room is a dirty room, regardless of how much or how little that guest is paying.
But you really need to inspire your team to do everything with love and with devotion. And it has to be there every day in every room and with every plate, right?
Yep.
And how do we inspire the teams to feel how they're touching the guest and how they're making an amazing experience?
So I want to give you a setup answer, and then I want to give you the actual answer. Okay. And the only reason I want to set it up is because it's important that before you even start, you have the right people on the bus. Okay. Moving in the right direction. And that means you're hiring good people. And I'll give you an example. Like I can't stand filing in my office. If there's you can't see my desk over, there's piles of papers. Okay. And eventually I put them in my outbox and my assistant comes and picks them up. Right. And then they get filed. If you stuck me in a filing room, I'm probably good for 15 or 20 minutes before I explode. Okay. However, there are people that we are looking at to hire and we've hired that love going into the file room. Okay. So number one, get the people who love doing whatever it is. There are people that really enjoy house cleaning or housekeeping and making sure those rooms look great. There's people who love the late night shift. There's people who love doing certain aspects of a hotel, but this could be for any business. Now, the actual question you ask then is, how do you get them inspired? So have the right people there to begin with. And number two, share the story. When you get accolades from your guests, customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, whatever business you're in, don't just keep them to yourself. Don't just go to the person that made it happen and pat them on the back. Create stories. I just wrote a couple of articles about this on my newsletter. Just 2 weeks ago, or the 1 week before last was, customers love the story. So you've got to share customer stories with customers. So when you get a good review, let everybody know it. Put it on your website. If you can get video testimonials, they love hearing the story. Guess who else loves to hear a story? Employees love to hear the story. So my follow-up article was, tell the story. By the way, every week I do a cartoon that goes with the article. I don't know if you subscribe to my newsletter or not.
I do.
Okay. So this cartoon that just came out was, I have the boss sitting in front of a half a dozen of the employees, and all the employees are sitting cross-legged. So imagine when you were a little kid and your teacher it was story time. You would sit there cross-legged ever so quietly. And that's what the image portrays. And then the boss is holding up a stack of papers. It says customer reviews, and it's a big, thick stack. And the boss says something like, I'm getting ready to share some reviews. And then one of the employees says, "Oh, I love story time." So
yes, I shared that, by the way, on my LinkedIn.
Oh, good. Well, thank you very much. So you share the story with your employees, and they love to hear it. And by the way, you always want to So I want to go a step further and answer a question that you haven't asked yet, because you probably won't ask it unless I give you the answer. But that'll give you an idea. Share the story. That helps inspire people. And I mean, of course, a good leader empowering people to do a great job. Earlier this week, I listened to Horst Schultz from the Ritz-Carlton, first
He's
president. Amazing. And I've interviewed him a couple of times. I've met with him, and then hearing him again, I'll just listen to him again and again. And even if he says the same thing, I'll pick up new things every time. But one of the things they talk about is the empowerment of employees. He gave a funny story. One of the questions was, you give the option of, or the permission to give up to $2,000. The housekeeper has up to $2,000 to take care of a guest. And there's a lot of training that goes into that. It's not like, I talk about this in the book, Amaze, Be Amazing or Go Home, the book you mentioned, that the Ritz-Carlton, they left dirty towels in my room from the guest the night before. And they were there when and the housekeeper was so upset, so apologetic. And I said, "Don't worry about it." And then that night, I got a little note with a little box of a chocolate on it that probably cost less than $1. Okay, so they didn't spend $2,000 to take care of me. They spent less than $1. The impact of that little note and that little piece of chocolate was so great. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. But Horst told a great story about how a guest freaked out. I think they flew to Hawaii, and they left their laptop computer in the room in the mainland US, right? And so they called, the housekeeper went in, found the computer, and actually bought a plane ticket, flew to Hawaii, dropped the computer off, and immediately got back on the plane and flew home. Didn't stay in Hawaii. It was obvious they weren't going there to get a free trip. So the manager said, "What you did was beautiful, but you probably didn't need to fly to Hawaii to deliver the computer. We could have overnighted it or something." But the point was, they interpreted this as, I've got to take care of our guest and do what's necessary. So these people, when you create stories, and he even said, we need to create these legendary stories so that others will have an example of whether it's right or wrong. And that was a little, it's like the tires at Nordstrom. Do you know that story?
No, I don't know that.
Basically, there's a Nordstrom, I believe it was in Alaska, Nordstrom department store, that a customer came back with 4 tires and said, "Look, they didn't last as long as they should, or something was wrong. I'd like a refund." And the person looked at when the tires were bought and looked at the receipt and opened up the cash register and gave the customer back the money. Well, the point of the story is Nordstrom's never sold tires. They sell clothes. They don't sell tires. So why would, and they created this legendary story because, it's not that the customer is always right, but, they're still the customer. But in this particular case, this salesperson, or whatever you want to call them, whoever is working the floor, took it upon themselves to understand that this customer was upset. And he was upset at that store. But he didn't realize that it was a Nordstrom that he was walking into. Because when he bought his tires a year and a half or 2 years earlier, it was a tire store that Nordstrom took over. Okay, so that's the backstory here. So this person could have said, "You know what, you're in the right place, but it's the wrong store. You're going to have to leave, and I'm not going to give you back your money." But instead, they did something. I don't know if it was the right or the wrong thing to do. I'm not going to share my judgment on that. I think it was the wrong thing to do. They could have helped another way. But regardless, they created this legendary story. I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do to simply give the person back their money, but the way they went about it, I think, so I can get into, was that right? Was it wrong? So when I asked Blake Nordstrom, who I believe just passed away not that long ago, which is sad, I asked him about the story, and his answer was, I wasn't alive when that happened, or I wasn't there when that happened, but I hear it's true. It was like, from this grandfather or father or whatever, but you get the idea. So you create
Absolutely.
these great stories. Anyway,
No,
I went off on a tangent here, but
but I
squirrel,
think it
there's a
makes a
squirrel.
great
Okay.
point because uh, the point is that we have to give the teams the freedom to make mistakes. And it's okay because if 95 or 98 or 99% of the time they're making good calls, or even 9 times out of 10 they're making good calls, and the other times we'll say, well, I am appreciating you for what you tried to do. Would I have made that mistake, that decision? I probably would have handled it differently, but you know what? It's a great story. And
Yeah.
it was worth it for Ritz-Carlton to be able to tell the laptop to Hawaii story because it really shows their culture. And it gives the employees permission. Look, if you make a judgment that we wouldn't have made, you're not going to get in trouble. This is what we trained you to do.
Yeah. And I think that when your decisions are made for the customer, it's much easier to say, hey, even though this wasn't right, you were thinking the right way, as opposed to, you made a major financial error because you can't add. Okay. And by the way, at that point, do you berate the employee? No, you teach them how to add. You teach them how to do it right for the next time, because it was when they're honest, mistakes, and it's not so much about competency, and maybe it is a little bit, but you hire people because they're good people that will do a good job, that will make good decisions. And if every once in a while an error, gets in, you're allowed to be educationally critical, and I use those terms together, because when you educate in the process of teaching something that went wrong, that should have been done a different way, that outcome means, oh my gosh, now I know how to do it. And I have more confidence going in. In one of my books, Amaze Every Customer Every Time, there's an example. We call it 1 to say yes and 2 to say no. When it comes to taking care of a customer, you try to, and yes is, in a general way of saying, I'm empowered to do what it takes to take care of the customer. But if I have to say no, or I don't know what to do, then I go back to my manager. My manager then tells me what to do, so that the next time it happens, I never have to ask the manager again. I'm at a restaurant in Mexico, and I'm with my wife, and we run into a couple that is from St. Louis, Missouri, where I live. And we say, hey, you want to go have breakfast tomorrow? Yeah. So we go to the restaurant, and it's very crowded, but there's this row of tables and chairs, and they're all two tops, meaning there's two people at a table. But we could push two tables together, and then we'd have a four top for the four of us, right? So we asked the hostess, who is taking care of us, when we walked up, could we push two of those together? And she said, hold on just a moment. I thought she was going to push the tables together. No, she was going to her manager to ask permission to do something so obvious, right? So maybe she was new, maybe she was young. I don't know. Or when I say young to the job, not young to as age-wise. But the next day we decided to have breakfast again. We came back, the exact same scenario, same girl, and we said, hey, we'd like to, just like yesterday, can we have those two tables and push them together? Hold on. I thought she was going now to push the tables together, because yesterday her manager gave her permission to do so. But what happened? No, she went back to get the manager again and to ask permission. So that's the antithesis of what we're talking about. So if you empower people to do the right job, they will do the job. When they make a mistake, you educate them and you tell them, look, I want you, 1 to say yes, 2 to say no, means you're empowered to take care of the customer. And if you do something different that you hadn't done before, but you think it's the right thing, do it. And then come to me as the manager and tell me what you did, not what you want to do, right? And then I will tell you, you were perfect. You did the exact right thing. Or, hey, you know what? this is the way I'll do it next time. And then what I'll do is when I have my next team meeting, I will say, let me tell you what Adele did. And I think we can all learn from this. And even if it was the wrong thing, I'm going to build you up, right? And I'm going to make you feel good about empowering you. See, there's this line in the sand that you don't want to cross, but you've got to teach your people where it is and to go right up to it. 1 to say yes, 2 to say no means you only come to me. I'm sorry. Yeah, 1 to say yes, 2. You only come to me. It takes 2 people to say no. The manager, when you aren't sure what to do, or you say, oh, I've got to say no to this person. How can I get around it? And then we teach you how to do it properly.
I once worked at a hotel, or one of the hotels in the collection was having a problem with the team. A lot of people were leaving. And I went over there to spend a few weeks. And I noticed that in meetings, some of the managers were saying, oh, if that happens, just don't deal with it. Just pass it over to me, pass it over to me, pass it over to me, pass it over to me. It was a theme I was noticing for a full week. And then I realized this team doesn't feel that we trust them to take care of anything.
Yep.
I
I'm
said,
guilty. As a leader, I'm guilty of that too. I try.
Let's teach them how we make decisions, what our goals are, what we're trying to do, and, go ahead and take care of the customer now. That's more important.
Yep.
Having them feel free and feel confident to go ahead and take care of the customer now, and then discuss it with us later. Hey, this
Right.
happened. What do you think? That's a brilliant way of handling it.
So I'm an entrepreneur, and I have, 5 people in my company, very small company. And Claire, my assistant, who actually is going back to school and leaving me. Oh, imagine that. I'm heartbroken. She's getting her master's now. And anyway, I digress. One of the things she said is, Shep, we are all very smart people. Trust us, because I'm an entrepreneur. And I mention that because many times entrepreneurs who work as solo entrepreneurs moving in, and even though I built a very small company, not a big company, what happens is we did everything ourselves when we first started. So we all feel that we can do the job better than anyone else. And that's a mistake. Everybody is capable of doing a great job. And I need to practice what I preach here many times and think about this all the time, is that let people do a great job. Now, if somebody's making the same mistake over and over again, you can understand how you might lose confidence in that person or in that particular issue. And then this constant, it's either they're right for the job or they're not right for the job. But if they're good at what they do, let them do it. Step back. Funny story. One of the parts of my business is we have trainers that deliver my content, and they go out and they do a great job. And one day I was doing a speech followed up by a training session with one of my trainers. And there's a concept I call creating the demanding customer. And I have this whole specific definition about what a demanding customer is. And that's, if you go to the Amaze Every Customer Every Time, I actually talk specifically about what that means is that you're so good that if the customer, were to leave you and go to the competition, what you would demand from the competition to get the same services we offer would be, where the competition would say, you know what, you're awful demanding. What do you mean? That's what they did for me. And then they'll come back, right? That's what a demanding customer is, not one that demands and whines and wants more and more. And my trainer got it wrong. He didn't go with my version of it. I'm sitting on the airplane flying home, or whatever, to another city. And the guy that hired me, which is also the one that hired my trainer because we came as a package, was sitting next to me on the plane. I said, what did you like most about what Tony did for you? And he says, that whole demanding customer thing is so intriguing. And I think we're going to implement that. And I'm thinking, no, that's the part he got wrong. How can they be doing it? And then I realized, boom, you know what? It's the customer's perception of what they love that counts, not ours. And if we do something, even if it's a little different than the norm, that's okay. I did go back and talk to Tony and told him what a great job he did, told him that was a highlight. And I think that he should include his version of it and mine next time. And then let the client choose what they like.
I loved what you said also in your books about setting the expectations right from the beginning, right from the interview process of expecting amazing every day.
And what does amazing look like? Because I think people can say, wow, how am I going to be amazing every day? Amazing is not hard. Let's go back to our friend Horst Schultz at the Ritz-Carlton. So there's a concept that I have been preaching, which is better than average all of the time. Not over the top, not blow me away once in a while. And blow me away opportunities are isolated to you hear a piece of information that you can capitalize on, or they come to you, the customer comes to you with a complaint or a problem, and you fix it and they go, wow, they are good. Okay. But you can't count, you don't want problems happening all the time. So how is it day in and day out that you can be amazing? Well, just focus on a little bit better than average all the time. And that might mean when people walk by, you smile at them, you give them a head nod, you acknowledge, you don't just walk by. That is a little tiny thing. It's a little better than average. It's tiny bit better than average. So when I was interviewing Horst for one of our podcasts, which is, Amazing Business Radio, I said, you and I have been talking about this. By the way, I had no idea that this was your philosophy. How much better than average do you have to be? And he said, 10%. 10% better than average. So on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is bad and 5 is amazing, 3 is average. So all you got to do is be a 3.3. And when you are 3.3 consistently and you don't, now, by the way, I'm not talking about isolated problems, okay? I'm talking about the typical interactions, and at the end of the entire experience, what would that customer say about all of the little interactions they had? And what you want them to say is, you know what? They were always friendly. They were always knowledgeable. They were always helpful when I needed them. They always responded quickly. The word always followed by something positive means you're in that zone of better than average. They're not saying they always went over the top and blew me away every single time. No, that might happen when there's a problem. Then they would say, even when there's a problem, I know I can always count on them. But when you put it in terms like that, being amazing is within the grasp of every employee and every company out there. It's not difficult to do. It's constant reinforcement of the message and constant training. What the Ritz does is they have pre-shift meetings every shift. Your hotel probably had daily, huddles every morning, right? And not every business needs an every morning huddle, but maybe once a week, that's not so bad, right? That's realistic. And if you're a restaurant or a hotel, it's easy to do, but every business can have short huddles to talk about what happened last week, the accolades for people who did certain, a process. They took care of a customer a certain way, and it's a great way to share that with the team. It's a great way to talk about something else, unrelated. But having that team meeting is really important.
Yeah, I think that the pre-shift huddle, whether you do it in person or on a video call, or
remotely today,
or even with a recorded message from the manager, with an opportunity somehow for the team to speak back as well. That is the best time to share best practices and mindsets and a little inspiration for what I call sparkling sunshine on the guest. And I think that you don't need a parade. You don't need to have the concierge be able to make an audience with the Pope. You don't need to fly to Hawaii with a laptop, but you do need to look somebody in the eye and smile at them and make them feel cared for, appreciated, and respected every time you are in contact with them, and do everything with love. And that is amazing. It is absolutely amazing just to walk by someone, as you said, and look them in the eye and say, do you have everything you need? And if everybody is doing that throughout the day, whenever they pass by that customer or that guest, they're going to walk away saying, I'm amazed at how gracious and how they treated me like I was Beyonce,
Yeah. So I heard something when Horst was on his presentation the other day, even though I've heard him say it before, it really resonated with me, and I'll share it here. When you walk by the guest, you don't just say good morning. That's average. By the way, saying good morning maybe is a little above average. Taking it to the next level is good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. adding that extra word. However, if I know your name, good morning, Mr. or Mrs. whomever, or good morning, Adele. And by the way, internally, when I walk by you and you're my colleague, my team member, if you will, and I say, good morning, Adele, as opposed to just good morning or a head nod or a smile, that
Wow.
takes that good morning, so that's the little nuances that don't take much, but make over a period of time a huge, huge difference. My wife and I, when we got married, we stayed, this is great. I was working at the Ritz-Carlton, did a presentation, and the manager of one of the hotels here in St. Louis said, what are you doing on your wedding night? Because we talked about, I'm getting married. Well, you're staying at my place on your wedding night. And that was a gift that he gave me. Actually, the gift was he gave me this incredible, I'm trying to remember. I think he gave me the free night. Maybe not. And it doesn't matter. But then he says, I've got something else I want to send you. And this is like, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months before we're actually on the wedding day. He sends me a reservation confirmation. Says, you don't have to use this. You can cancel it. But I've booked you for 2 weeks at the Ritz-Carlton in the main island in Hawaii. As I told him, that's where I thought we wanted to go. And you're getting this incredible rate. I think it was like an employee rate. Okay. Now we were there for over a week, or maybe right at a week. And we walked in Hawaii, and after that first nice experience of being checked in and taken to a room, et cetera, from that point on, every time we saw the people we'd interacted with, they were using our name. Hello, Mr. Hyken. Hello, Mrs. Hyken. It was such a little thing, but using somebody's name. Think about it. That's what we're talking about here. Nuances, small things that become major. And to this day, I'm like, how does this person know my name? Well, then I realized when this bellman said, hello, Mr. Hyken, the other bellman was standing next to him and paying attention, right? So the next time I saw somebody I never even interacted with, hello, Mr. Hyken.
That is amazing. Absolutely. That would make me feel wonderful. And you deserve to feel wonderful, especially on your honeymoon.
Yeah, we love it. We love it.
I'm going to ask you one final question before we go. This has been an incredible conversation, but these are such tough times in the hospitality industry. You know that from your involvement in or your family's involvement in restaurants as well. This is such a hard time. And for the people who are still working, it may be even a harder time than the people who are not working, because they have the pressure of having to try to juggle many different responsibilities, too much, very often very challenging guests at this point. For some reason, I've heard a lot about that from people who are still working. They have such a burden of stress and also worrying about their health, their families, their own finances, very often on a smaller salary than they're normally making. And what can leaders do to try to relieve the burden and the stress of their team? How can we shift the mindset to something more positive so that people have the wherewithal to sparkle a little sunshine on their guests and be amazing?
Sure. So, and by the way, you mentioned my family's background in restaurants. It's actually my daughter who's loved restaurants her entire life. And she's working with a very famous chef in New York, Danielle Boulud, and doing marketing. And now she's the Swiss Army knife. She does everything. Packing orders for Goldbelly, getting the to-go orders ready that are being picked up and delivered to, Long Island and even the Hamptons and other, areas around New York City. By the way, when somebody comes in for curbside service, imagine the top-rated restaurants. One of the top-rated restaurants in New York City. They're coming by curbside service to me. Some of these people, some of the customers mean I'm going to drive up on my chauffeur-driven car, roll down the window. My food is going to be handed to me. I'm going to eat it in my car, and then I expect you to come and pick it up and take it away. It's like going into the drive-in diner. I would, as a kid, would go in and they'd put the little tray on the window. So, anyway, I digress. So your question is a good one because it's very. Sometimes the pressure with a team member is my teammates may have been laid off, but I got lucky and got the job. There's guilt there. And it's important to know there's a reason you got the job and you're still there. It's because you do it, you've been practicing and pushing to this level. But the customers are more demanding as well. And the reason is because they're very stressed out. What happened after March 13th of this year, when the pandemic really became, the brick wall that shut down a lot of the economy, and, people are now being, told to quarantine and stay in and only go for walks with people, people became very stressed over that. And the companies that were already very customer focused, it was like there was a magnifying glass put on them, and they responded so well. By the way, the ones that weren't, that same magnifying glass showed just how big the flaws were. So if we've got a great company with great people, and we have to recognize being customer focused means empathy, understanding where your customers are. By the way, that's the word of the year of 2020 is empathy. By the way, you know what the phrase of the year is? You're on mute. That's the Zoom call.
Indeed.
Yep. My friend, I think it was Joseph Michelli, shared that tidbit with me. But it. So the point is, we need to share stories to keep people motivated, reinforce, realize that as a leader, you have to be optimistically realistic. And that means when you hold up the glass, is it half full or half empty? The answer is yes, it is. And optimistically, we have a lot to look forward. Pessimistically, at this moment, we're struggling and doing what we have to do to stay in business, and explain and be very open and share your personal story as to what you're doing and what you're thinking to get this company to continue to operate during these times and come out even better. Before we got on today, you and I were talking about COVID-19, and there's a lot of death and sickness and sorrowful emotions I have for my friends. One of my closest friends passed away of COVID just 2 weeks ago, and that was tough. But I will tell you, the opportunity to spend more time with my wife, to spend more time. My daughter, who's in the restaurant business, did get laid off for a short period of time, almost 3 months. She came and lived with us. When do I get to have my adult child live with me again? By the way, it's a good thing she went home. Back to New York. No, just kidding. But I mean, the opportunity for us to embrace some of the good that's happened, recognize that, what, we have certain clients that we've been able to help that were in a tough spot with this. I feel really good about that. Share these stories. We talked about this earlier. Share these stories and what you're thinking with your team, and inspire them to go with you along this journey.
That's fantastic advice. Sharing, communication is always the way to a better relationship. And when we try to be brave enough to be vulnerable and really speak from the heart, people feel that they're united and that they have a team to support them.
Yep.
Don't you agree?
I agree 100%. I'm shaking my head yes for those listening. I'm shaking my head yes.
Fantastic. Shep, it has been an absolute privilege and a joy to have you come and visit us today. I hope I can welcome you back again another time.
Oh, yeah. I hope so too. And as we talked about earlier, I want you on my show.
Oh, I'm there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll record that in the next few weeks. And so within the next month or so, people can listen to me on your show and you on mine.
Thank you so much, Shep. Is there any way that you want to suggest to people where they can find you and follow you?
Sure. Just go to hyken.com, HYKEN.com, and you'll find everything you need there. If you want to follow me on my YouTube channel, you can just put my name in YouTube, or go to sheptv.com, sheptv.com. And there's 600 videos. Every article that I write for my newsletters, I turn into a video. It's a great tip. A lot of companies share them once a week with their teams, and it's fun. By the way, we did, I don't know if you saw my little holiday video.
No.
It's called, if you go to my LinkedIn profile and just type in my name, you'll see this video we created with my friend James Dodkins. You should interview James for your show.
Okay.
James Dodkins. He is a CX rock star, customer experience rock star. And literally, he was a rock star traveling the world in a heavy metal band. And so we did the 12 days of CXmas, like the 12 days of Christmas. And we had a bunch of our colleagues join us for, to say, and on the 12th day of Christmas, and everybody, I mean, my friends, Gene Bliss, Joseph Michelli, Ron Kaufman, Dan Gingiss, Joey Coleman, Joey and Dan actually wrote the lyrics. And then, James plays the guitar, heavy metal. And if you can see and you're watching us on video, I have my guitars. I played some of the lead and helped, and then we collaborated and made this thing happen. It is so much fun. So the holiday music.
Well, thank you so much, Shep, for all your inspiration. I can't wait to watch the shows. And thank you. I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining, and I hope we'll see you in a week or two for another episode of the Hospitality Reputation Marketing Podcast. Get great reviews. If you like what we're doing and want to support us, please don't forget to share, subscribe, and tell your friends, and leave a review if you can on iTunes. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.